All right, it's 5 o'clock. Call the Public Works Committee meeting to order. Um, Should we do roll call, I guess? Joe Hall,
McCollum, Dill Stackhour.
Bill Westenberg. Okay. All right, on the agenda, first thing we have is open forum. Doesn't look like there's anybody here for open forum. Move on from that. Second thing is approve the minutes from the March meeting.
So moved. I'll second.
Second. Okay, it's been approved in second. Vote on it, I guess. Aye. Okay. Third thing on the agenda is the 2025 road bond updates. The first line item underneath the road bond updates is the Minnesota Power buried power line construction costs and considerations. I don't know, Tom had sent out an email here a week or so ago. Did everyone get a chance to read that email that Tom sent?
No.
Okay.
So what I did is I met with representative from Minnesota Power talking about burying power as part of the 25 road bond. In Grandview, I also talked briefly with them about a future project, doing the same thing downtown. And so Grandview definitely has some interest in burying their power down there. Right now, to bury their main transmission lines, Minnesota Power saying in that Grandview area, they would cover the cost of that. However, the service connections have to be paid by either the city or the property owner. If you want that. Otherwise, what ends up happening is they still have poles for a lot of the service connections. Which, if you're not getting rid of all the poles, what's the point? That's the way I.
That's standard procedure though, that the power company doesn't serve the residences, or is that local?
It's, for Minnesota Power, it's their standard operating procedure, I guess. Downtown, it's the same thing. They would bury a lot of the main transmission lines at their cost, probably if we did it in conjunction with a road project. I don't see a downtown project happening for that probably for a decade or more, just because we recently resurfaced Main Street. But when we do, as long as their policy stays the same, they would probably do a lot of that work. But she did give me an estimate, rough estimate for other parts of that they wouldn't cover. And so there's a line that runs down the alleyway, closer to 371, and then there's Main Street. Well, the alley would be 300,000. And Main Street would be potentially as much as 320,000. Those very broad estimates, but that's the ballpark that we'd be looking at. If we wanted to go the line down Lakers Lane toward the school, that would be an additional 200,000. And we would still have to hire our own contractor and engineer to design and do the work to make the individual service connections.
I'm very curious as to what kind of an agreement the city has. Is this Minnesota Power?
Yes.
What kind of an agreement does the city have with them for putting poles on the city right away?
Right now, we don't have anything. A few years ago, I was working, trying to get the city council to consider doing, there's a term for it. It's, basically it would be a licensing requirement to be in our right of way.
It's like a franchise fee, isn't it?
Yes, thank you. That's the
Yeah.
word I was looking for. And at that time, we were considering it because there was so much boring that was happening. And we don't know what's in our right of way anymore. But we also were, there's a small fee that's collected for that, for us to keep track of that. Plus then we get a lot of the information, so we can have a copy of it here right now. A few of them will, give us that information when they're gonna go on the right of way, but they don't all do that. And so I think this would be another argument for maybe it's time to consider the franchise fees. I don't think they have to be huge amounts of money, but I think at least if you set up the structure for it, then going forward, if it becomes an issue for, a larger issue for the city, you have the framework to do it. And all the utilities are familiar with them, you know, it's not like they're not ready to work with you if you have them. But
Maybe, Tom can speak to this better than me, but in my experience in the past, power companies in general put their lines on city or county right of way
Mhm.
free. But then if the use of the right of way changed for whatever reasons, it was up to the power company at their expense to do it within a reasonable amount of time, move their poles or whatever as part of their free use of the right of way. And that's kind of common.
And I think they do that, Dill, when it's above ground. It's at their,
Yeah.
at
Think
their
underground.
discretion, they
Yeah,
can go
yeah.
either way. But we're requesting in these areas to go underground.
Okay, so the city's requesting. But I did notice, when they did the construction on the trail, and I was a interested bystander, but I wasn't in on the details, but it seemed like the power companies were, companies were holding up the contractor over and over because they wouldn't move the poles.
Mhm.
And I would ask somebody about it and they'd say, well, you know, they don't have the manpower, or they're working somewhere else or whatever. Consequently, you know, that's one of the reasons that drug on forever.
Yep.
There are other reasons. So it seemed to me like the power company was kind of running the show. And I didn't think that was proper, being there using the city right of way free to start with. So I wondered what the city had as far as any agreement, if any, with the power company.
I don't know that we have anything specific. I don't know if it's state law, maybe. I don't have anything in our ordinance that I've ever seen specific to us and Minnesota Power or us and Growing Power saying that. So I would have to investigate that a little further to give you a better answer.
Yeah, well, it comes into effect right here on this, where we're talking about adding lights at two places. You know, they want pretty good price for two poles and two lights, and they're gonna get the revenue from it. You know, that doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense to me.
We do pay for every single street light that we have,
Yeah,
a fee,
you
and
did,
we did pay to have them put up.
you did. Huh?
Oh, yeah. For instance, it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago. We had a lot of new lights put up, adjoining 371 and I think some of the county roads. Each and every one of those, we had a charge for.
Really?
Mhm.
Sounds like
Not
a
as
good-
much as this probably, but it was significant.
Yeah, it sounds like a good deal for the power company.
Well, it is, but we also do have a lot of citizens who,
Electricity is a
Requested some of that?
necessity, yeah.
Well,
Mr.
it's a
Chair,
Public safety issue.
you know, Tom, if we're gonna look into that, I don't know if there's state laws that govern, you know, whether or not you can charge a franchise fee to a power company, but I know you can to cable, data, you know, internet. I know there's quite a bit of undergrounding going on, but there's still overhead, you know, using those poles. And it is in the right of way too when they underground, so maybe that's something to take a look at as well.
yeah, for me, and I think in the case of Nisswa, it's not so much that we need the revenue source as much as we need a mechanism so we know what we have, where it is,
Right,
whose it is.
right.
For instance, back here on, just off Poplar, Birch Avenue. There is a low hanging line there. And there was nothing clearly marking it as to what it was. I figured it out, but we didn't have a direct contact for it. And people were calling to complain about it, that it was low hanging, thinking that it was dangerous. It turned out wasn't, it was, fiber optic cable, I think. But by looking at it, most people wouldn't know, and I couldn't tell them who to call directly to
Right,
get that answer.
right. And it's not gonna be a big moneymaker, but I think there's a measure of accountability in having some kind of a contract between the city, the village, and the
Mhm.
provider, whatever it might be. Might be something the council might want to ask the city attorney to look into.
Yeah, I think we could take a better look at it this time. The last time we looked at it, the council just wasn't interested in it. I think they had just gotten done with, some issues regarding cable TV. And people were in a little bit of a tizzy about the increased cost for cable TV. And they thought if we had this, franchise fee and did some of this work, that we were gonna cause everybody's cable bills to go up.
Yep.
No. Not by a significant amount, if anything, so.
Yeah, there's some administrative, if you're gonna do that, there's some administrative stuff that goes up, along with that, but
Well, we do a lot of administrative stuff already, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I had people call me about this line, for instance. We don't get a dime for dealing with that. I don't have any
Right.
money that helps me
Right.
pay for putting, say, a file cabinet here to keep.
and those are the kind of things that a franchise fee might, help,
Yeah.
take care of.
Yeah.
But
And I think the league has a bunch of background
I was
information.
just gonna
on that
say,
too.
maybe Jenny can, shed some light on that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I guess I can look into that some more. Maybe we'll talk about that here in the months to come.
Good idea.
Anyway, my only point with the buried power is, that was primarily that was a Grandview request that we consider that if we're gonna do a road project. I still would have to meet with Grandview and talk about this and see how they feel about it, if they're ready for that kind of an expense, if we did have the power lines buried down there. And we also need to talk about the scope of the road project down there again. Now that we have a little bit more information to share with them, I think it's probably wise for me to set up.
Mr. Chair, I think a couple of these were residents that requested the streetlights.
So that's another line item that we have, that's 5 and 6. So this is really in, a separate issue of dealing with the buried power. For the road
Yeah,
projects.
Goes further on in the.
Oh, that was Roy Lake Connection.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion, I know we kind of veered into it a little
it's fine.
bit.
And I guess I'll just say from what I know, on the fire department end in Grandview, when the storms have gone through, or I can't remember a summer or a time going by when a major high line hasn't gone down somewhere in the resort for the last 20 years. We're over there constantly dealing with them in one fashion or another, whether a vehicle hit them or a tree on them. And it's actually a pretty big public safety thing. Just last year, we had 77 shut down for about 4 hours right there at the entrance in 2 spots where a high line got hit again. So it's just an ongoing thing that actually is happening more often than anybody in the community realizes over in that area for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the drive, I think, behind it.
Mhm.
So, anything else with the buried power lines, item 3?
I guess the only thing I would say to that is, if that's something that we're gonna pursue further, just that it's clearly understood that we would be hiring a contractor to do service lines. And we don't have to do it tonight, but we would have a decision to make. Is the city gonna share in any of that cost for the services? Or are we gonna have that passed directly on to the service, user?
I guess I would be in favor on passing that on to the user. It is an in benefit for them, without your power going down and being disrupted. I do think that we should investigate it more, especially over in that corridor in the Grandview area. That would be my take on it.
So I think what we're gonna need is we're gonna need probably Widseth or the contractor that would do the work to give us an estimate of what they think that would cost per connection.
Right,
Then there's a variable in connections too. If we have a three-phase connection, or if they have just a regular single-phase connection, there's quite a difference in cost and what's required there. The city would have a substantial three-phase connection, in Grandview with lift
Right.
station 3. If we decide to go down East and West Linden and bury power there, we would have 2 more lift stations that we'd have to concern ourselves with too. So that's true. Something to keep in mind. Probably what I'll do is I'll talk with Bill in the upcoming days and we'll see what it would take to get an estimate for that. And then, I'll come back with that probably next month.
sure.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Then on to item number 4, the 2024 road project, Sumac Trail and Lundy Drive proposal from Woodseth.
Yeah, that was what I just handed out to you a few minutes ago. This is a proposal that Bill has put together for us, to work, to put together a project, for Lendy and Sumac. There's some items such as if the road is in the right of way, we know that we would have some drainage issues that we might want to, that we would need to fix before we pave it. This agreement would give us that. It would put together a project that we could take to contractors, for that work. And so this 21,000, maybe Bill could explain this a little better than I can, but, would be for Widseth to do the engineering work for that road. For those 2 roads, the estimate for the 2 of them, the preliminary one that Joe had prepared a few months ago, I believe put the project estimate at 107,000 for the 2 roads to pave.
Right.
For both of them together.
Yeah, they're, if you're familiar, 115, the part that's being paved this year. They're right off the end of that, right on the far east end of that project.
Hmm.
They're 2 of our remaining gravel roads. My hope is that with this project and then, the 2 road bonds in 25 and 26, we're gonna eliminate all of our remaining gravel roads except for Bass Lake Road. And the reason Bass Lake Road isn't going to be eliminated is, well, some of you are familiar, we've been working on that. It's more of a lakeshore issue than a Nisswa issue, and so we're looking at that being driven by the city of Lakeshore when they would like to do a paving project down there, because they will have to participate in the cost of that for us to consider that, so.
But in the meantime, your agreement for what they maintain it, you maintain it, and snow removal and all that?
Yeah, so we
You just
clarified
split
that.
the-
We had an older agreement that was in place and it really was very common man language, I would say. It really just said, city of Lakeshore, maintains it, city of Nisswa plows it. And so
That's it.
we agreed to go back to that. And so that's where we're at right now. We plow it, they maintain it. They, if there's any gravel that's needed, if there's any grading that's needed in the summertime, chloride for dust control, it's city of Lakeshore.
Mhm.
So I guess what I would be looking for off of this is if you want to take a few minutes and review or Bill's proposal, or maybe Bill, you want to kind of go through this a little bit with them and so
Sure.
you know what it is, and then see if you're comfortable making a recommendation one way or another to the city council.
I guess one of my questions is, do we already know that we have a lot of easement acquisitions that we need to do along there? Has anybody looked at that to see how that's,
I think
I-
this would determine that.
this would determine it? Okay. But I guess my question then is there potential additional cost for those easement acquisitions, or what would that look like over in that neighborhood?
Well, we don't know exactly where the roadway is relative to the right of way.
Sure.
So the idea would be is to, if we survey it, we can figure out where the roadway is relative to the right of way and then what easements that we need to do. Yeah, I think that's something that we'd have to do in the future is when, once we get all that information collected from our survey crew and they put in the property information. And then if we have to do additional easements, yeah, that would be an extra cost. Even with Widseth, I guess, from collecting or even trying to get those easements.
And I guess maybe my question is, to our knowledge, there has been no survey work and this has never been done on that road.
Not that I'm aware of, not in the 17 years I've been here.
Okay.
Yeah, and it says here it's not provided in this cost.
Yeah.
I got a question, Bill.
Okay.
That looks like pretty, healthy fee. 21,000, that's like 20%.
Yeah.
That seems kind of high.
Well, the thought process was, so what I did, maybe I'll just explain how I came up with the number. So I went out and I looked at the project, I looked at the roadways, and when I looked at them, it seemed like, it wasn't as simple as just, adding class 5 and paving it and creating a pavement section. There seemed like there needed to be some grading, adding some ditches because it looked like the roadway itself was carrying the water on the roadway itself rather than having it drain off of that roadway. So what I did was I kind of went through and created some tasks to do this. And so like I said, we have a survey to go out there and do that work. And that was $6,500 to do the survey, do the property base. And then the next thing was, I think, in order to make it so that you can get contractors all to bid the same thing or provide a quote for the same thing, they need to be able to have a plan set. So I thought in order to do that, to raise the roadway to the proper elevation, we'd have to create an alignment profile, a typical section that matches the city standard. And then maybe some geometry at the intersections and around the cul-de-sacs and the turnaround at the west side, or no, the east side. Add some cross sections, I guess, in order to figure out and make sure that it drains and that we grade it properly. And then because this roadway is the disturbed area is going to be more than an acre, we need to do an MPDS permit and do the SWIP. So there'll be there was a little bit of cost in there to prepare those documents and permanent erosion control along the roadway. When you go out there and you look at it, there's some areas where the road was cut through like a berm or something like that. So the water just stays on the road. It doesn't drain out of there. So there's some areas where you need to grade off and create some ditches next to it and do some grading. And that total was, just to do the design portion, was $8,000. So I put in $1,000 to assist the city with bidding the project, or receiving quotes. And how much of that we use kind of depends on how we work together to come up with, who's going to do the work or not. And that would include like preparing the contracts, doing, reviewing what we get back, and issuing a notice to proceed if everybody is okay with everything. And then it also includes the construction services. So I figured there's gonna be some time to do construction administration, do some construction observation. Our idea is that it really isn't gonna take them that long to do it. Couple days to do the grading, couple days to do the area base, a couple days to do the paving. So we thought we'd be there like part-time for the area base and the grading, and maybe full-time for the paving. Make sure that we get the proper thicknesses that we want. And And then we would actually provide staking, but the staking would be minimal, maybe like offset staking in the center line. It would just, define the profile, and the contractor could build off of that based on, with our plan. And so the staking administration observation was 6,200. So this 21,700 includes staking, or basically construction and the design and the surveying. I know it's a little bit more than what we normally see but on the lower, seems like on the lower construction cost project, the design work seems to be a little bit higher percentage.
Seems to me like pretty much everything you stated are normal, things that you run into when you design something and put out the plans. And, 20%, yeah, maybe it's a smaller job, but 20% is really high.
Correct. I mean, I would say it's like you said, it's just a couple day project. You know, if Anderson Brothers, let's just say, goes in there and does that, they're gonna be in and out of that pretty quick. It's not a big road.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right, yeah, so that's, I'm in favor, kind of with here too. It seems pretty steep, the price on it. And I guess the other thing that I would like to see maybe this committee talk about, or the board, going through, is I'm just gonna use the trail as an example, and I'm not poking at anybody, but right now, when you go down the trail, even after the last rain, and there's water sitting in it in places that everybody knows and sees, is that a WSN issue, or is that the contractor issue? I know it's not the city's issue, but so if we're doing all this engineering, designing, you had mentioned on this road, there's water pooling in the middle of the road. At the end of the day, if we go out there and there's water pooling in the road, is that Woodseth's responsibility or whose? Because that's what we got with the trail. And so I guess that's one of the things that I would like to see with this committee is we need to look at these contracts a little bit more and make sure that there's some meat in them for both Woodseth and whoever the chosen contractor is, so that when I drive down Lower Roy Lake Road and there's water pooling in the middle still, hey, if this elevation was set, and I'm not taking a jab at anybody, I'm just saying, at the end of the day, when a project is done, somebody has to be responsible. And I guess I would just like to start that process with this on us as the city, saying, we need to know who's gonna be responsible, that we, as the city, can go back and say, that's your issue. What are we gonna do to correct it?
Right, Tom, I have an opinion on this too.
Well, I just want to offer that the trail hasn't been fully completed yet.
Sure.
And
It's
so
still
it's,
hanging.
so there, as far as I know.
Yes,
I
we are-
believe Amber had said that it's not
Mhm.
fully accepted yet, so I think they're still working through some of those drainage issues.
Exactly.
After that's done, if that's still an issue, I totally agree with you that.
Yeah.
Is a problem.
Yeah, I have several problems with that job actually, but I don't know how many times now they've gone in and tried to redo some of those areas that don't drain, and they still don't drain. And I've wondered too, now who's paying for that? Is that engineer's responsibility? Is that the contractor's responsibility? Who's running the thing?
Right, and I guess that's what I'm saying, right on the front of any of these jobs. I think we need some sort of contract, and maybe it's the city attorney getting involved with, I want to know who's being held responsible at the end of any project going forward, is my stance on it.
So the trail is a parks project, so
Right.
Amber's the representative here that works with it. Joe Dubell had been with Widseth, was working through the issues with the trail, the drainage issues.
I have a
Other than
question,
that,
Tom.
I don't know a lot about it.
Who paid for all those changes in the drainage? They had to add drainage, several different areas. Some of them were fairly large. Who paid for that?
don't know.
Was that a design problem or was that a contractor's problem?
I don't know. Wasn't involved. I don't know.
Right, yeah, it's tough because that was a park thing, but I'm just bringing that up as an example because, yeah, I agree. 20% engineering fee on a 2-day project, in my opinion, is pretty high price. And then if we are gonna pay this kind of fees and kind of numbers, at the end of the day, doggone it, that road's gonna just drain beautifully. And if it doesn't, somebody's gonna be redoing it, is my opinion. With the kind of numbers and the prices, asphalt's gone up just astronomically with the roads that we're putting in. We're looking for a premium product at the end of the day. And with these kind of fees or whatever, I'm just saying,
Well,
I'm gonna ask everybody for this on the front end, whether it's the contractor, or WSN, or whoever's involved.
I mean, when we design the project, we try to, or at least when my thought process was, I tried to come up with a fee that kind of reflects what we're doing out there.
Sure.
And try to lower it as much as I could. I mean, I started with a number that was even higher than this, and I kept going down, trying to figure out, okay, now what's the best way for me to get the best bang from the design standpoint? And this is the point that I came with. But as far as like, the more we, like here, we're only gonna do construction observation, part-time for portions of it, and then full-time on other parts of it. We try to balance between providing too much inspection and spending all your money and trying to, get the best product that we can with the least amount of our time being spent on the job. But there's other projects or other things that we've done where we've been out there 100% of the time trying to prevent all that, and that's what the owner wanted. But in this case, we need to keep the costs down. So
Well,
this is
the
a
problem
solution.
with percentages is that it depends on what the work is. For instance, if you're designing curb and gutter, that's really not a whole lot of material. You have to put the same grades in as you would with a street. Really, the engineering is the same, but curb and gutter doesn't amount dollar-wise to a large amount. Whereas base and asphalt and all that stuff that goes into a road puts the price up, which means your percentage, what you get actual dollar-wise increases. So even so, I just have never seen a project that, go for 20%. And I've had a fair amount of experience in this stuff. I mean, if I could have gotten 20% on jobs, I wouldn't be, I get half that. So then I have another question, Tom. Now, Widsith is the city engineer, right?
Correct.
So when you signed a contract with them, did they give prices for everything, I assume, for labor and this and that and what they're gonna furnish and so on?
We got a manual that said what their fees were for various services, yeah.
But then when they are your so-called engineer, there is no competition. In other words, they are lined up for every job that comes along. Now, that's not all bad, but there's gotta be something in there that tells you, that you have some control over this.
You could go out for bids for the engineering on any project,
Can you?
yes. As
According to your,
far as I understand it, yes.
then why do you have a city engineer?
Cause I'm not an engineer for one, so certain things come up. If we say we had an emergency issue come up, that needs an engineer's signature, certain council questions, just like why do we have a city attorney? We have a city administrator. Well, that
And
kind
I
of
think, Mr. Chair, that every year you have to reappoint who the city engineer is gonna be, who the city attorney is gonna be.
Right.
all that. So you have, the capability to go out and change, if you want. Take bids for whatever services you contract for,
the council just reaffirmed Widseth as a city engineer.
probably in
I think-
January.
And part of that is, having 10 different people constantly changing, somebody bringing up the speed, whatever. There is great benefit in having consistency with the same engineering firm, same team
Exactly.
of people from year to year.
Yeah.
You know, and so I get that, but also too, like, you know, there's gotta be checks and balances. It's just not an open checkbook, you know? And I don't know, I mean, construction services administration, observation and staking for $6,200, doing it part-time on a 2-day job, that means 8 hours divided by 6,200. You know, just rough math, that's $800 an hour. Seems
What-
kind of hefty.
What I'm hearing is that you want this to go back and you want them to sharpen their pencil a little bit?
Yeah, or more description on, you know, really what's this gonna do, what's it gonna take, you know?
Well,
You know, I guess, I don't know, I'm in agreement where I know the road fairly well, I know what you're talking about, where it goes through there and stuff, but too, I'm just going, I guess I've been around the dirt moving process quite a bit myself and looking at it and going, boy, a competent contractor can come in there and put some nice crowns on those roads and the water's gonna flow off into the different areas and going $22,000 worth of work. I guess I'm not seeing it. But I don't know. I don't know if there's, you know, just an aerial map or something and saying, here's where we need to concentrate most of our time, GIS, a simple, this is where I see a big problem that we're gonna have to do a lot of shooting and elevation. I understand the survey and I think that's a benefit. All the city roads, I think, need cleaned up with all the easements and lines and setbacks. They're all kind of a mess from what I know throughout town. And so, sure, the surveying, I get all that, but the design and the administrative is 15,000 on top of the surveying. That's what I guess I'm kind of wondering.
well, just to put a little bit more information in this,
Sure.
I even broke out, you know, like creating an alignment. I only put an hour for my time and 2 hours for the technician. I guess it could be one, but you know, so there isn't really a whole, and then you go through and you look at all the different hours that we're putting into it. I mean, you could reduce the time a little bit, maybe, but you know, there's only so much you can go down, and then you're not even gonna end up doing some of these tasks that I mentioned, you know, like the profile and the typical sections and stuff like that. So there's only so much you can reduce to a point when you're coming with the design plans and specs. And then when you get in, like the construction services, like I said, we spent. So just for the observation, I have 24 hours, so 8 hours for the, 4 hours for each one of the, like the subgrade, 4 hours for the, aggregate base, and then figuring it's gonna take them a couple days to do the paving, so that's 16 hours. So based on what I explained, that was 24,000 or 24 hours, and that's roughly $3,200. And then plus the staking to go out there for a day.
Is it a 2 lift?
Yeah,
Tom, is this,
and they may be able to do it in 2 days, depending on how close the plant is and all
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
Tom, is
Sure,
this, basically paving or is there some drainage and
There's a
very
little-
much drainage?
There's a little bit of drainage and the drainage is more gonna be filling in certain areas, I believe. I don't know the quality of the gravel all the way through. All I can say is that as my staff has hauled a lot of gravel in there in the last 15 years. We built the cul-de-sac on the west end of it. I would say there's another option for this too, if the right of way was close. I mean, you could do the survey. Most of the other stuff, you could just approach Andersons or whoever and ask them, to put together a project, if that's what you wanted to do, and we could bypass a lot of the engineering, but then we run the risk of, did we miss something?
So, is there a little curb and gutter? Not much, though, basically.
I don't know if there's
paving.
gonna be any.
I don't think
curb
there's
and
gonna be
gutter.
any.
Just basically road.
Just basically road.
So,
It's
you know, you got
a couple
road
blocks
material.
long down there.
Yeah.
I think it's, the length is roughly about 1,800 feet.
But not a whole lot of material being used. Then, you know, the percentage could go up, but when you have paving involved, big quantities that are high priced, your percentage should go down if anything. Cause you're doing the same design. So I just, that just seems to me to be well aligned.
I guess, I would be. I'm not sure what to recommend at this point. Before Bill was involved, I had talked a little bit to Dave about how to handle this project, and there's a few other ones like it that we'll be doing in the future. And we had talked about just going directly to Anderson Brothers and Knife River and getting quotes, let them
Right.
figure out what needs to be done. And that's still an option. We haven't agreed to anything yet. But I'm not sure how the road fits in the right of way. That's one question. And as far as how much filling or whatever we would need to do, I think Anderson's could probably eyeball it. This is a gravel road, by the way, right now. So I mean, there's not anything that it's paved is better.
It's a dead end gravel road that's never gonna be a thoroughfare.
The only reason we would want to verify a few things like the quality of the gravel.
Yeah, it's across from the girls' camp, the field where the horses are. It's right across, yeah.
The only reason we want to verify the quality of the base underneath, or I shouldn't say the only reason, but one of the reasons is the city's been trying to make sure that our paving will last 30 to 40 years. And without, so we have to, excuse me, it would be wise for us to try to verify quality of that base.
I'm
And
sure
maybe
that-
Anderson's can do that.
Yeah, they do their own boring and testing.
I'm sure Anderson could do the whole job, but there's always a risk there too.
So
if somebody isn't watching.
I think this committee could probably put together some, parameters for how we want to handle these road projects going forward as far as what we're looking for engineering. Maybe on simple roads like this, we don't need it, and we just, our policy is to go directly to Anderson's with a profile that we would use. We have that profile, we know what that should be. But I think as we move forward, the roads are gonna get more complex, especially that 26 road bond. I wouldn't even consider doing that without real engineering work done. 25 is mostly milling and overlaying. Maybe that could still be done, but we have to, I think we'd have to figure out where are those places where we need it, and so we're consistent. And what do we expect to pay?
Yeah, and I just look at this road, I don't know, what does it service, about a dozen houses in there?
Yeah, something like that.
They're all on Lindy Trail or Lindy Drive, really.
So
Yeah.
originally, when I was looking at this, the idea was trying to get it done in conjunction with the county roads being
Right.
paved. I'm trying to, I don't mean to put the rush on you, but
Well, it only
that's
makes
where I'm
sense.
trying to work toward. Maybe there's a little bit of savings for us, and if
They're
nothing
working
else-
there right now, I think, or they're.
Yeah, they
starting.
are.
Yeah, they closed that road.
So, if we get too far in the weeds with some of this and it, cause I still have to get council approval from for whatever we do too, and this would be just the engineering, so. For instance, if you decide tonight that we should just go to Anderson Brothers, now I have to go find them, get them to come out and give me a bid. I have to do the same with Knife River, then I have to come back here, get you to recommend that then to the city council, who then votes on it for a project. Well, that's a two-month process because our meetings always follow the council meeting. So if I had everything ready for you tonight, you might recommend it to the council, but they wouldn't vote on it until middle of May. If I come back to you at the end of May with an update with the quotes from Anderson Brothers, the council won't be considering this project until the middle of June, unless we do special meeting of some kind.
I think it's already too late.
It might
Or,
be.
We're having an early spring and they're working in there now.
Yeah.
They'll be coming this direction, they aren't far from there right now.
And it could be. I haven't talked to Anderson, so I don't know what their schedule looks like. I don't know how hard or easy this would be. Same with Knife River. I don't know.
Yeah.
I believe Anderson has the paving for the county road, but I'm not positive.
I don't know who's doing that.
Either way, Um, it's not, it's not a done deal. It wouldn't kill doing this project if we can't do it till next year. Just simply was trying to make it work with that county road if we
Right.
could.
Is this, Mr. Chair, is this something that the residents down there have asked for, or is this just a city initiative?
We've had a handful of residents that have approached us over the years looking for us to pave down there. So that's another thing to consider. Once I have quotes for how this, or an estimate from the engineer, one of the two, one of our meetings is gonna have to be a public hearing
Yeah.
after we've notified those folks, do you want us to pave it? So I have what I think are a good sample that have said they want it. I think that was enough for us to, yeah, we need to look at this. But we would want to give them the opportunity to say yes or no, or maybe there's some things that we haven't thought of that they want done on that road, that we'll have to consider. So I think at this point, if I could get quotes back, I would say we're probably at a point where we're too late for this year, kind of like you're saying, Dale. I think we're gonna have to look at this as maybe a spring project for 2025. But we can do all this work this spring, have it lined up, maybe even get it bid out, so we're not gonna get a price increase come January. And have it ready to go, have the citizens all notified, get their approval and move forward,
Could even be a fall project.
maybe.
So in the meantime, like Joe was talking about, are you thinking that you want some kind of something in place to where when you look at these things, okay, this is what we do for this kind of project. We don't have to go out and get, the city engineer to do this.
Right.
This is a contractor can come in, they can, you survey it and they just come in and do what they do and bypass the engineering.
You can do that.
With some extent, I'm just looking at this and knowing these two roads and stuff and knowing, okay, it's not a thoroughfare. It's just a dead end road. It services about a dozen people. It's gravel right now. To make the road last 20 years, it's gonna last a long time. There just isn't the traffic. There isn't the wear, the tear on it like any other street, to pay another 20% cost above and beyond a project like this and get it all engineered. I just don't know that the value's in it on this particular thing for the city versus, yeah, some of these other roads. I'd rather spend the money and put some more curb and gutter in on some of these other problem issues and the other roads and the current price of asphalting and stuff. I'm just saying, I think we gotta be diligent on where we're spending our money to get everything fixed up, and this will be quite an improvement for them. I think it will last the 20, 30 years. And I guess I'm not concerned with Knife River or Anderson Brothers coming in and knowing how to build this little road. It's basically an oversized shared driveway for these residents. And so, yeah, I would though say that there's still the survey work that we should get done. So that gets cleaned up, and set and all straightened around. I think that's a good thing to do on any of these projects, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, paying somebody out there to watch the thickness of the asphalt going in on this road, I don't know if that extra cost justifies what we're getting out of it.
Can I say something? Earlier you were talking about who would be responsible for, if there were problems on a roadway. Let's say the contractor is given this plan, or said, here, you need to go out and pave this road. Here's what we want it to be, 22 feet wide. But there's what we would provide them with would be the specifications so that they would know what they're supposed to use for material. We would tell them, they would have like the method of construction for doing the paving, for doing the aggregate base, so that if they didn't do it, you could go back to them and say, you need to do this and do that. By just giving it to and I like Anderson Brothers or Knife River, that's not an issue. That's just when you don't give them any kind of guidance like that, you could end up with something that you were talking about trying to prevent, where you have problems, but then you don't have anything to go back on. You're not asking for, you're not asking for bonding, you're not asking for, insurance documents, you're not your certificate of insurance for them, you're not, and all these different things that would be in the specifications that we would ask for, review and approve. So that way, in that way, it would be looking out for the city's best interest, but if you're just gonna go to the contractors, these two contractors and have them just go out there and do it, you may not get exactly what you want, and if something were to happen, then what?
Yeah, and I mean, bonding, insurance, all that, that's pretty standard that the city's gonna ask for anyhow, with or without a third party in place. And also too, then if there's one person involved, there's only one phone call to make to go to that person and say, you know, and stuff. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. Myself personally, I just don't think it's that complicated of a project, and knowing the talent level, the resources of either one of those companies in the area to do a project and to do it correctly. I mean, there's asphalt all over by both of them, and I don't know. It's risk versus reward, and maybe it's not a big enough thing either on this. I just think in general though, as we move forward with these road bonds and stuff, that we need to be conscious of what we're doing. I mean, I'll just tell you, it just kills me when I go by a site and there's somebody in a pickup truck smoking a cigarette that we're paying to oversee the project. It just kills me that we're paying that kind of money for that. I personally just have a tough time going, what are we doing? You know, we're hiring a professional company to do this. Also too, I'd say that there's some sort of trust level that they're going to do a quality job for us without having somebody babysit it. But my opinion again.
Going back to, house built, isn't it true that whether you spec it out or Anderson does it or whoever, everybody uses the same spec? Basically, it's all MnDOT stuff.
For the paving, yes.
Right.
So, I mean, they all do it the same way and they all follow the same specs. The specs do vary depending on the job, and you could have the city engineer give a very general spec, say we want MnDOT so-and-so spec.
We have that.
Yeah, if you have that, you know, you can use that when you hire somebody like Anderson. I agree, it's, you know, it's just, not a very big job, and it's not serving very many people, and it'll probably last more than 30 years, you know, there's no traffic there to speak of.
I can go either way. All I would say is we've been defaulting to everything is engineered, and that's
Right.
been the way the city's functioned.
We've kind of come full circle here, I think, in this, this discussion. We're paying a premium for engineering because it's a standalone project, correct?
Yeah.
And maybe going forward, just the way to approach these things is just stack this with other projects when they, you know, when you come up.
So I should probably back up a
bond.
little bit and explain something here. So these two were a part of the bigger bond. And we pulled them out because the winter was very mild and we knew we weren't gonna use all of our maintenance money for crack filling and patching this year. So we knew we could probably surface a couple smaller roads like this with that money. And that would lower the overall bond, or the bond that we're looking at doing going forward. So this is kind of new for us too, is that we're looking to do smaller paving projects with either maintenance money, or maybe we're looking at increasing or adding a line item in our annual maintenance budget for some of these smaller projects like this. So this is kind of a test for us too. If we want to continue to have it engineered and maybe you want to put it back into bond, it still could, because like you said, we're not going to make tying in with county road project like we wanted to do. That's part of another reason why we were looking at it this way. So I guess I would look for some direction from you, how you want to handle that. Do you want to continue to do this as a standalone project, or do you want it to be considered for engineering with the bigger road bond?
I mean, if that, I don't know what that number would be, but if that number was reduced down, I'm just picking a number like 15,000 or something like that, would that be more palatable or?
I guess for my knowledge, I would maybe like to use this as a little, I'll say, test or experiment. If we have this information, we know this now, and if we go out to Anderson Brothers and Knife River and say, this is what we want, whatever, what information do they supply us back directly? You know, what does that look from them? What's their testing? What's their fees? You know, and truly at the end of the day, what are we saving? And that might show us going forward that, hey, we're really not saving anything because they're gonna do some of this work that's not done for them too. And I don't know that we know the answer to that, you know?
So the survey work that we were talking about was 6,500.
Right, yeah,
So we know we have that much into it.
right.
So, let's say if we were just gonna contact Anderson's or Knife River to have it paved, between the survey, maybe some other little incidental things, maybe we have 10 grand in engineering we have to do here.
Right.
It's 15 grand that much of a stretch if we got all of it.
Yeah, no, it's not, it's just, yeah, once again, as we move forward in the road bonds and stuff and, you know, as I was reading through like one of the road bonds, you know, when we get to replacing the asphalt over at the fire hall and the community center and all that and stuff too, you know. Or, you know, that would be another example as we're moving forward. Are we gonna pay for engineering for all these parking lots and stuff where, you know, I guess I just, yeah, I wanna look at what are we really getting done? What are we getting engineered as we continue to move through these projects and go, let's use it where the money really needs to get spent and pull back where we can.
So this is a small enough project where we don't have to go out for competitive bidding.
Sure.
So that might be one place where you could definitely draw a line and say if it goes over that amount, you'll want to have engineering because now we can't just limit the project to Anderson and Knife River, who we trust. You get a lot of smaller contractors coming in who we may not know or outside contractors. So I think
Right.
that would be a good point to
You
do.
don't, you don't know who you're gonna get. I personally, I wouldn't be comfortable with, you know, saying, oh, we'll just get the contractor in here to do this stuff. I guess I'd want some engineering oversight. In a small project like this, I think you should just, you know, it's negotiable, I think, to go back and say, you know what, this is too much, like we've been saying.
Mhm.
We need to lower this a little bit, you know, that's too big a percentage of the total project estimate. What can you do?
I think we're in agreement that this project isn't gonna happen in the timeline that I was looking at with the county project, so we have time to let Bill go back and see if there's anything he can do to make this fit what we talked about here tonight.
What is the money situation again on this
So
little?
what
project?
this, what it is, each year, the city budgets a little over $100,000 for, crack filling and patching and other miscellaneous
Mhm.
repairs that we have to do after a typical winter. And that would be spread out throughout the whole community. We knew with this mild winter that we had that, and some other, we had done some pretty extensive repairs in the last few years, that we weren't gonna have a lot of that. So, my, maintenance supervisor and I have talked about this, and I've talked about it with the city administrator. That doesn't make sense for us to do a smaller project like this one as just a maintenance project. You know, whenever we can save up enough money to do one, maybe we do this outside of bonding, save ourselves some expense and some time that way, and
That'd
that's
be a
where
good
this
way
came
to
from.
try this out.
And this was the first one we were gonna try.
Mhm.
And I don't wanna say that we wouldn't ever do this again. I mean, I think we should
Mhm.
consider it. It's like I said, for sure, the city administrator and I have been talking about, do we put a line item in maintenance budget where we can do small paving projects, maybe it's, you know, we're not doing them every year, so maybe you accumulate it to where you could do, say, a $200,000 or $300,000 project. And you don't need to bond or, for it, you just, we're gonna do this.
Well, I appreciate, his concern too, with Tom's, as far as having somebody, you know, look at this thing and knows what they're doing. And, I don't see any reason why the city can't negotiate with their city engineer just to do that.
Sure can.
Just very basically, look at what they're gonna, what, say Anderson wants to do. Say, is this gonna be okay, you know, look at it and tell us. I think you can save a lot of money doing that, frankly.
You know, maybe the other thing we could do too is invite Andersons in here just to talk about this. How do they feel about having the engineering, not having the engineering? How would a project like this turn out? You know,
I know what they'll say.
I think that's a worthwhile thing to do, to, you know, run that
Right.
by him and see, and, but you know, the quality control aspect of it is what my concern would be,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess.
one thing I will say about the construction observation, I would love to be able to do that, and I could probably do most of that work
Yep.
myself. From a technical standpoint, that's not a
But
problem.
it's a time issue.
That's the key.
Yeah. And
is-
most, you know, Nisswa is too small, but you know, even a mid-sized city, they have an engineering department to do those kind of things. You know, engineering techs, maybe even their own city engineer.
Yeah, what I find is that I get too bogged down with things like
Yeah.
customer calls and little fires that I have to put out
Yeah.
every day. So for me to go out and at a specific time and watch a road project being done, is difficult. So that's part of why we've always had the construction
And that
observation
makes,
included.
that makes a lot of sense.
That's a common
Yeah.
thing that you hear with all of the people that we work with is
Just don't have the time.
people like Tom don't have the time to do the inspection stuff, and that's why we end up doing it and providing that service. They don't want to have to deal with the day-to-day operation of the construction project.
Yeah, and I get all that and I understand it. And where I'm coming from, we just witnessed, like I say, the other project that doesn't exactly pertain in this room, but that's how that was set up. And we see the result of it. And so, it wasn't supervised, it wasn't engineered right, or it wasn't constructed right. Because that's what we have with the trail in several areas. You know, and
But it's-
I'm not knocking that, but, and that still needs to work itself out. It just seems like for the amount of issues that you can visibly see is, you know, a timeout should have been called earlier.
I think part of the problem on that project was too much time was given to construct it. Now, I know why that was done. The idea being that you get a better bid, which really isn't true because you know Anderson's gonna get it, number one. But that was stretched out over so many months that Anderson would come in whenever they had a few free days, they'd do a little piece, then they'd leave. Well, it's very hard to supervise something like that from that standpoint. So it makes everything more difficult. And you can see the result. I mean, to me, that trail leaves a lot to be desired.
If it stays the way it is, when it's finished, I would agree with you. I have a hard time speaking for that because I haven't been the staff
Right.
person in charge of that. And I don't wanna accuse the other staff of doing something wrong, cause I don't know that they have, I don't think they have. I think some of it is just circumstance, but, yeah, I mean, maybe there are things that we can do that would avoid some of that going forward with the future projects. Maybe we have to talk to the city attorney. You know, are there things that we can add to our contracts that would guarantee us some of that stuff, that would give us an out?
There's always on construction, there's always the unforeseen stuff, and then how do you deal with it? And
Yeah.
you
One of
try
the
to,
oth-
you try to see try to be as best you can when you're doing the design to see all the different things and try and envision all that, but sometimes you just can't.
Two things I would say about that particular trail project that would make it challenging to deal with the water. One, the roadway does not have any kind of ditching, drainage. And so where do you put it? You know, you're not gonna, if we had built an extensive drainage network for that trail, would have driven the cost of the trail up substantially to the point where the trail probably wouldn't have happened. And same with the resolution for that stuff too. You know, if we wanted to catch every possible drainage issue there, we might have had a higher engineering expense too. So I'm not saying that those things couldn't have been done or shouldn't have been done, but ideally that trail should have been built with the road. Cause we do have drainage issues with the road, some that were made a little worse by adding the trail. And some that the road had that are affecting the trail too, so.
Well, in my opinion,
And it's also a road standard issue that we've had with the city of Nisswa, not putting in any kind of road ditching.
in my
And
opinion, the design is flawed to start with.
so,
There's no separation between the trail and the road. There should be curb and gutter all the way along Hazelwood to his location. Because there's no separation between the trail and the road. It's dangerous. You know, we got about this much width. People are driving all over it now. The trail should have been up on a curb.
on Hazelwood, it was I know that was challenging. And again, I wasn't there for all the specifics of it, but I know that was challenging. We didn't have enough room. Buying the right of way was expensive. And that separation that is there was what was allowed by the state, as far as I understand it.
Well,
I'm not saying it couldn't have been built better. I'm just saying that it was allowed.
if you want to look at separation, just look at the public access they put in. You know, personally, I would have put curb and gutter on the whole thing, because you know what they've got, they got a mess there. But you see where they did put the curb and gutter? Right next to the trail. They provided separation between the trail and the street. You have nothing to stop a car from driving up on the trail when you don't have a curb there.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
we-
that's just basic trail design.
I do know that we've had some issues with people driving on the trail even where it is separated. So,
Oh, you can, yes, but that's why they do that. And if you're a trail user, it's just like the trail in Lake Shore now that they've got going down 77.
Mhm.
You will see very few people use that because you feel unsafe on it. You know, they got it part of the road, it's part of the road, and they don't even have, they've got a line painted, but they don't even have bike signs. You know, it's unsafe. You won't see many people using that.
I don't know. I think
Well,
that's the
can tell you
whole,
that, but I'm a trail user.
So what do we want to do at this point? Just,
Well, I think so you're gonna maybe query Anderson Brothers, Knife River, or whatever, just to get an idea
sure,
of what. And then you're also gonna go back to, Witseth and see if you can negotiate a little bit less on their services fee.
yeah, we'll have them look at this agreement again, see if they can pare it down at all. And probably what I would also do is,
So-
confer with them as far as maybe a alternate agreement if we decide to go down the road with Andersons or Knife River.
Okay.
What does that survey work? And any other minimal stuff? You know, a separate agreement that would do just that. And maybe it doesn't need to be surveyed. I don't know, I haven't verified where the road sits in the right of way down there. I would say, Joe, you're probably right. Most places in the city, the roads are not centered in the right of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that would have to be fixed. We would, if we have, right-of-way purchases that have to be done, I think you're probably back to this because we'd have to deal with all those, homeowners as far as acquiring what right-of-way.
What does the plat look like?
I would have to,
What does
Dig
the
it up.
what look like?
Hmm?
The plat?
The plat of that area. Do they show right away?
Yeah,
You know how much?
I can't remember exactly. Well, I don't, yeah,
Most of our right of ways are 66. I'm not sure if this one's a 66.
Hmm.
I'd have to verify that.
So would it make sense, Mr. Chair, to proceed with the surveying work? Because you're gonna have to do that regardless, right?
Yeah, I think that we could pull the survey work out and do that regardless, you know? You know, and I don't know what the timeline is on the survey work, but my guess is that's gonna take several weeks anyhow to get that done.
So maybe what we could do is have Widseth drop a new agreement for the survey work. And with your recommendation, I can have that just brought to the next council meeting for
Yeah.
Right.
an approval.
that
Yep.
makes sense.
Yeah, so we don't slow the project down, so maybe it's something we could still get done this fall.
And then for our next meeting, I'll try to get a representative, probably from Anderson Brothers, to talk about if we were just gonna do this as a contractor direct project. I'll see if there's a better overall agreement with this. Now that we're gonna do the survey, but the rest of it, is there anything
Yep.
else that can be taken out of it? We'll probably be able to tell you by then if there's a significant right of way issue with it or not, I would guess.
And then I guess, you know, as we're kind of talking about this whole situation, as we look at the upcoming road bond, you know, are there other things, small projects like this that we can identify? Like I mentioned a couple that were already put in that, hey, we're just replacing this parking lot as is. Do we need a lot of survey work or engineering work done for it? You know, things like that. Are there other items within the town where we're like, hey, we might want to just go contractor direct once we learn this process?
So I would talk to that a little bit. The two bonds that we're gonna do, there's two of them. The first one is gonna be largely projects like that. It would be parking lots, it would be some of the roads where all it's gonna be is just a mill and an overlay,
Right,
minimal drainage work, not a lot of curb and gutter, not the roundabout like we would have on Main
Right.
Street. So, yeah, I think, I don't know if I'd have it ready for next month, but I might. A list of those roads. Well, actually I do. I think I already have that list made. So we can consider that and you can get an idea. We can talk to Anderson's and Widseth as far as what does that look like? I think there, though, you're gonna run into, if we do it as a bond, it's a big enough issue where it's gotta go out for bid, so there would be some
sure.
engineering. They're probably not gonna do much for the parking lot, like you say, but overall, maybe as for the bond, there's some significant work that might have to be done.
Seems to me that surveying could be pretty extensive, depending on, you know, what has happened over the years there and, where the street is now. It might be totally haywire with what's actually there, and that happens a lot. So that could be quite an expense to survey that whole area. And in other words, you're surveying basically each lot along the road. That could be a big expense.
well, they're not, the survey that's proposed there isn't to do a boundary survey for every single one. They're not gonna go out and find all of the irons. They'll probably find enough to tie in with the plat.
Okay.
Not every single one.
Okay. So you're assuming there are corners there that you can go by?
Yeah, or some control out there, maybe it's not right there, maybe it's down
Yeah.
the road or something like that, there's something out there that they can tie into.
Anyway, it's pretty hilly and so on. That could be a fairly good expense.
Should we move on to the item 5 and 6? We can do those together, I think, right? The
Yes,
two
we can.
streetlights.
Yep, so, I gave you a portion of, Minnesota Power's, proposal to add those two lights. So as a project for both of them, you'd be looking at, $12,107.79. They're giving us a credit of 1,400 times two. So you're subtracting 28, so to do both intersections would be 9,307.79. Now, since I got this, I've talked to Amber, the Parks Director. The one at the lower Roylet and Lodge Drive intersection isn't what was requested by the citizen that started us looking at this. And it's more of a trail. Do we need lights for the trail? And that's kind of to answer your question, Dill. Where we left that is any of the lights that would be required for the trail, the Parks Committee would like to look at that, and the Parks Director, where they want to be consistent. If we add it here, do we need to have it down, say at the intersection with Hazelwood? There's nothing there. So it's a bigger question, kind of to answer what you were asking there. Yes, that's where the trail crosses Lower Roy.
Right.
But, so the first intersection, Lower Roy and Aspen, it's not so much for the trail as it is when they, built the roundabout, the golf course now empties onto Lower Roy Lake Road at that point. And so the citizen that was requesting this was concerned about the amount of traffic coming out of the golf course and being able to find their intersection, find their way back out to 77 basically. So he believes that a street light is needed there. Nisswa has always tried to minimize the amount of street lights for light pollution. So I guess that's the first question you have to ask yourself. Do you think this is necessary? And now you have a price to go with it. So half of that 93, looking at about $4,700, I guess.
Right.
What
I
is
guess-
a $1,400 credit? What is that for?
I'm not sure. I'd have to ask.
I guess my question is, the concern is the trail and the golf course and stuff from the citizen, right? None of that is happening at night in the dark. People aren't playing golf. The trail, generally speaking, isn't used. I mean, in this situation, a warning light with a flasher or something more like a school crossing type of sign, trail crossing sign, in my opinion, would probably be a better use of some money and funds than a street light at night, because the issue is during the day with the golf carts crossing, stuff like that, than at night. And I guess I'm not sure that we're using the right device, so to speak, to,
That could be an issue there.
you know, more of a warning light, you know, like we have out in front of the fire hall there with the strobe, something along that nature that somebody could push a button when the golf carts are going across, whatever, to alert traffic, because I think that's what the concern is, and those concerns are happening during daylight hours, not at nighttime.
So the other question I would have is whether it's a street light or a warning light, like you're suggesting. Is this a Grandview expense? Should we be approaching them with, we have a concern here? Would, do we require them to install a light or participate in the cost?
Golf
somehow?
course safety issue, isn't it? Use.
I see it that way.
That's the most use in there, you know, with the carts going across.
Excuse me.
Well, it's not just the carts now. It used to be that streets been there for a long time, but it was rarely used, But now they have to use it to get out of the golf course.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be that way.
Mhm.
So, it's an issue. Yeah. I think there might be an issue there next to your property, your business property on that corner where the trail crosses from Hazelwood over to Lower Roy Lake Road.
Right.
That is a busy corner, as you know, and there's no trail markings or anything on the street. I think that could be a problem area.
Yeah, the biggest issue, I've already told PD about it, but the biggest issue there is nobody stops at the stop signs yet.
They cruise through it.
Every day, I bet you, we see, not exaggerating, 15 people just blow through the stop signs, because I don't know if they've been driving on the road 20 years and they just don't register now that there's stop signs there, but nobody stops at that intersection. For every car that stops, 2 blows through it. It's kind of crazy.
Hmm.
So I don't, there's something there that's not registering with people to even stop with those new stop signs.
I agree.
Yeah, there's not stop ahead signs or anything like
No.
that. And it's a 30-mile-an-hour road. You'd think they'd have plenty of time to see it.
Well, now you've got a trail crossing there and you don't know whether the people are gonna go kitty corner across that corner or whether they're gonna go at right angles.
Mhm.
There's no painting on the road or anything as far as the trail's concerned.
I'd have to, talk to Amber and see if they've considered anything or if there's something that's part of the project that isn't done yet. That does that, I don't
That was one of my
know.
questions. There's no painting anywhere and I wondered if that was part of the project or if that comes later.
We could certainly add it. You know, if there's not.
But yeah, I guess my recommendation instead of a street light would be some sort of warning light. And if that's a topic that needs to be brought up with Grandview for the golf course, then I'd say maybe reach out to somebody at Grandview and
Yeah, I
ask them.
can get a hold of, I think Lonnie's the one who we'll have to deal with, so.
Lonnie or Mike at the golf course.
They actually are creating the problem, you know.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a minor oversight from when they built the roundabout. You know, they started directing the traffic to Lower Roy Lake Road to try to pull traffic away from that intersection, especially during the construction, and I don't think anybody recognized that it would be an issue
Yeah.
to bring those cars out there, so.
Other than that, anything else with the streetlights?
No, I guess from what I've heard, we'll pursue looking at a warning light and asking Grandview about it. We'll nix streetlights in these two locations for now. And, if we have another question about it, we can bring it back up.
Number 7 then, anything else from the committee, questions, reports, anything? Then, I guess, our next meeting then is, May 29th at 5 PM. And then, yeah, other than that, make a motion to adjourn.
Move.
I'll say.
Perfect.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.